Street Journal calling into question the mental fitness of President Joe Biden. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, the issue could decide the election.
Should he be on that or any ballot? The Wall Street Journal is out with new reporting calling into question the mental fitness of President Joe Biden. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, the issue could be an election decider.
As the Wall Street Journal is out with reporting calling into question the mental fitness of President Biden. We want to know, are you worried about President Biden's mental fitness? As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, the issue could be an election decider.
As the Wall Street Journal is out with new reporting calling into question the mental fitness of President Joe Biden.
And as national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, the issue could be an election decider.
Lawmakers think this can be an election decider.
And so it goes on and on. For minutes, clips of news anchors at Sinclair Broadcasting Group reading almost verbatim the same script about a recent Wall Street Journal article that was a direct political hit job on President Biden. Hi, my name is Suri Crowe, and you are watching the Meidas Touch Network. This story originally appeared in Aaron Rupar's and Judd Legum's public notice on Substack, so shout out to them for some solid reporting. Okay, Sinclair Broadcasting Group is a media group that is owned by right-winger David Smith that owns more than 190 local news stations across the country. These are stations that are network affiliates, so they can broadcast content from networks like ABC, NBC, CBS, or Fox. Sinclair has a national news desk with a correspondent, and management sends down national pieces to news producers called must-runs. I'm very familiar with these. That means that the local newscast must inject these national packages into their local news coverage. Sometimes the pieces could be legitimate news, but in many instances, like this one, it is a narrative that management is pushing. In this case, it's to promote the widely panned and criticized Wall Street Journal article titled "Behind Closed Doors: Biden Shows Signs of Slipping," a title that the editors of Rupert Murdoch's owned Wall Street Journal intended to alarm readers. The big problem with this piece of journalism written by Annie Linsky and Siobhan Hughes is that their only sources were right-wing partisans like MAGA Mike Johnson, who is completely in the tank for Trump, and ousted House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who is apparently on a rehab tour to get back into the good graces of Donald Trump, and he is also a known liar. It was a terribly sourced story.
Biden shows signs of slipping. Republican critics in the article, the one is former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The Journal writes, quote, "Last year, when Biden was negotiating with House Republicans to lift the debt ceiling, his demeanor and command of the details seemed to shift from one day to the next, according to then House Speaker Kevin McCarthy." Why didn't they just ask Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Well, exactly.
Why did?
They could have
and
just.
Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, it's really shocking, especially when you see what Kevin McCarthy has said repeatedly, publicly and behind the scenes about Biden on those same days when they were negotiating.
From Politico last year, quote, "McCarthy mocked Biden's age and mental acuity in public."
In public, like he did in this article.
While privately telling allies that he found the president sharp and substantive in their conversations, a contradiction that left a deep impression on the White House.
So the Wall Street Journal piece did not include several interviews that the reporters apparently got from Democratic leaders who went on the record with them, including Nancy Pelosi, as well as Delaware Senator Chris Coons, who tweeted this out. "As I told the Wall Street Journal, I have met for hours with President Biden about complex foreign policy issues. He is sharp, engaged, and leads the conversation, whether it's on Ukraine, the Middle East, the Indo-Pacific, or immigration. It's a shame that this interview wasn't included in the piece." So even Fox had a gasp blasting this hit piece.
Well, number one, that Wall Street Journal article was a sham. There's not a single criticism on the record by a Democrat. It's all Republicans. It's a partisan hit piece, and they should be embarrassed about it. Joe Biden is 4 years older than Donald Trump. They would go to high school together, like at the same age distance. The American people will make this decision for themselves. You look at that footage of the press conference, I didn't hear a question for 10 seconds. It was a bunch of reporters screaming. I don't know anybody could get a question and decipher out of that chaos. So the American people are going to make this decision for themselves. They're going to see the policies that are on the line, from abortion to climate change to gun safety, on down the line.
This synchronized message from Sinclair is not the first time that the network has rolled something like this out across all of their local affiliates across the country. Check this out.
dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely 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 dangerous to our democracy.
Ironically, it was that choreographed and sort of creepy message warning about fake news that was released a few years ago that led to other journalists reaching out to me about the inside workings of Sinclair. I had recently left Sinclair as a local news reporter after my insistence to report the truth about stories clashed with my manager's directions to promote Trump Republican-friendly stories. Sinclair execs promised to push pro-Trump narratives in 2016 in exchange for access to the campaign. When I found this out, I figured out why I was getting so much pushback and why I was told to put Trump quotes in stories. It was crazy. It did not sit well with me at all. I was horrified, and my pushback with my managers turned into a whole nightmare for me. I have documented this in a few articles, and I've also done a couple pieces here for the Meidas Touch Network. So I will include a link to those other videos about my backstory with Sinclair below in the description of this video. So you can check them out and find out a little bit more about my experiences working for this right-wing broadcast group. Another reason that Sinclair is so dangerous is because studies show that viewers and readers tend to trust their local news reporters. They know us, they see us around town, at the grocery store, etc., as part of their community. So when a media giant like Sinclair links up with Murdoch Enterprises to launder a baseless narrative about Biden's acuity, viewers are likely to take it more seriously because they're hearing it from their trusted local news anchors and reporters. But make no mistake, corporate media, whether it's packaged by pro-fascist Fox News or secretly injected by Sinclair, is always pushing an agenda. And it's an agenda that benefits the shareholders or wealthy owners. That goes for the other big networks too, which is why you are not seeing the bare naked, unvarnished truth about Donald Trump. Him waving to non-existent crowds, slurring and cussing his way through rambling, nonsensical speeches.
He just came up. Are the teleprompters not working, sir? Not even a little bit. Great job. And then I don't pay the company that does it, right? And then I end up with a story Trump doesn't pay. I don't pay contractors that do a shitty job, and that's a shitty job. This is the worst border in the history of the world. There's never been, no third world country has a border like that. And no third, I'll tell you what, and I hope the military revolts at the voting booth. We have the greatest military.
Notice that he struggles to say certain words. He's trying to say military, but he's military or terrible. That is not a stutter. That is his brain drawing a complete blank. So he slurs and makes filler noises. I mean, just, if you haven't sat through an entire Trump speech, I invite you to. Seriously. He does this over and over and over again. The truth is that Trump is in severe cognitive decline, and the mainstream media is not reporting it. And in my journalistic opinion, that is journalistic malpractice, because the mental health of a person who is the presumptive Republican nominee for the president of the United States is a huge story. And the same obsessive attention that they are focused on President Biden's age, while there are no accurate examples of any cognitive or mental decline with President Biden, is really disturbing, because the person that is demonstrating those and so many other issues is Donald Trump. It is such a failure. I am so frustrated with so many of these mainstream outlets. New York Times, I'm talking about you and others, because we are at an existential point in American history. So this is why I really enjoy talking about what's really happening here on the Meidas Touch Network. Anyway, and it's because of the media's gaslighting that two clinical psychologists started a podcast to educate the public about what is really going on with Trump's mind. It is called Shrinking Trump, and I am a huge fan. Here's a clip.
Brought me back into the public fold is that I saw the public was being gaslit, that they were being told that Biden was cognitively infirmed, and somehow twice as many people believe that Trump was cognitively intact as believe Biden was, and that it seemed like the media was gaslighting people, that it was pathologizing Biden's normal signs of aging and normalizing Trump's blatant signs of dementia. We are shrinks, and we're going to be analyzing Trump, but Trump is also shrinking. That part of what I am predicting will happen over these next months, and you can hold me to it, I'm saying it publicly, is we are going to be documenting his cognitive deterioration. Because I always say to people, look at Donald Trump right now, because that's the best Donald Trump you're ever going to see. Because dementia is a deteriorating illness, and his rate of deterioration is accelerating. We saw deterioration from the 80s when we were analyzing him in 2017. Now people who were in his administration say he's not the same man he was 4 years ago. So the rate of deterioration is accelerating. And so I don't know what will take for the mainstream press to actually ask the question, is something wrong with Trump's brain? I think even if he was caught wandering down Fifth Avenue in his pajamas, disoriented, they wouldn't ask the question.
Please check them out. I have watched every episode. They do a great job. They have the background and the expertise to talk about and affirm what so many of us are seeing with our own eyes. And when they say that the mainstream media wouldn't report on Donald Trump wandering down Fifth Avenue in his pajamas, they're right. And what a failure of the mainstream press to not be doing the job, so that these two clinical psychologists are like, well, we better start up a podcast again to warn people about what is happening. So that brings me back to the subject of the right-wing laundering of Biden's health. I reached out to some Sinclair management execs regarding this latest pro-Trump synchronized message. And one of them said to me, quote, I think it is wrong because we have not and would not do a story like that on Trump. Was there any medical proof to prove Biden's mental capacity declined? This is a disservice to what we do. Amen to that. And those are exactly the right questions and standards that news executives and news leaders should be asking before they put out a piece like this to millions of people. Here's what I know from observing and being around President Biden. He keeps a breakneck pace that is exhausting to me, and I'm definitely a few years younger than he is. He flies from one country to the next, meeting with world leaders, discussing incredibly complex topics with little sleep, goes into war zones, and is razor sharp at speech after speech. He's got the country on a fantastic economic path. He mastered OPEC. He broke that whole syndicate of Middle Eastern, a grip on our oil prices. He's doing a really, really good job by all metrics. I'm not just saying that because I like President Biden. I like him fine. I liked President George W. Bush and covered him as well. I certainly thought his policies were disastrous. So liking someone and saying that their policies are working for the country are two different things. And these are observable facts. Does President Biden speak more softly than he did 20 years ago? Yes. And that is a part of normal aging. That is not a sign of mental decline. And speaking of which, here he is at a Moms Demand Action rally against gun violence after a recent marathon trip to France where he spoke at several areas and honored French and U.S. veterans on the 80th anniversary of D-Day. So here he is back in action on American soil after an exhausting day, one in which his only surviving son, Hunter, was prosecuted by his own Justice Department and subsequently found guilty.
You're the reason I'm so optimistic about the future of our country, and I mean that. In 2 weeks, we'll mark the 2nd anniversary of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It's the most significant gun legislation in nearly 30 years. And we passed it only because you went out and worked like hell to get it done. May have the idea, but you got it made. You made it happen. It was designed to reduce gun violence and save lives, and I'm so proud of the tremendous progress we made since then. The year before I came to the presidency, the murder rate was the highest increase on record. Last year, we saw the largest decrease of murder in history of murder.
He makes perfect sense to me. Do you hear him yelling about sharks and electrocution? Is he screaming, the justice system is rigged, it's a witch hunt, it's not fair? No, you don't. And President Biden is the one person who could have made the investigation into Hunter Biden go away. He could have. He allowed a Trump-appointed special prosecutor to look into his son. And I am certain that he knew there was a real risk that it could go the wrong way for the family in terms of, that this could really put his child at risk of facing punishment. But he didn't make it go away. We know exactly what would happen if Trump and the MAGA people were in office. The corruption is right in front of our faces. But our president respects the rule of law and the justice system. So you're not hearing that from him. And so his heart is breaking for his child, yet he carries on and does the job presidentially with focus and compassion. Corporations are buying up more and more of the media landscape, and corporations want what's best for them, which is big fat tax breaks and not having to pay people more to work and, possibly shorter hours, etc. So they are normalizing Donald Trump's unhinged behavior because it serves their corporate interests. It doesn't mean that every mainstream news story is terrible, but buyer beware. Be careful where you are getting your information. Great reporters often don't have a say in what is covered. I know this firsthand because I fought those battles in many newsrooms, particularly when I was working for Sinclair. Why let the truth get in the way of a good corporate narrative? The right-wing media system is intentionally gaslighting and projecting. Whatever they accuse Biden and the pro-democracy movement of doing is exactly what they are guilty of. It is an upside-down Orwellian world that we are currently living in, which is why it is so critically important to get accurate information out to people so that they can make informed choices when they go to vote this November. Here at the Meidas Touch Network, we are unapologetically pro-democracy. We are reporting what the mainstream media is too afraid to touch. My name is Suri Crowe, and you are watching the Meidas Touch Network. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I do hope to see you back here soon. Please share this video and comment below. I love reading the comments. You guys are just incredible. So shout out to all of the Meidas Mighty. Peace.
Real quick, Meta just changed their algorithm to suppress political content. Please follow our Instagram at MeidasTouch right now as we head towards 400,000 followers so you don't miss a beat.